Welcome back to segment 2 of show 13. So if I didn't piss off everyone, or at least all the female audience in segment 1, I'm now going to piss off everybody for playing devil's advocate in this segment. We're going to talk about the e-Parasite and the Protect IP bills that basically are trying to unravel whatever the DMCA sort of brought onto the internet in '98. What is the DMCA? The DMCA is the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And basically what that did when Congress passed it in 1998 is it updated copyright laws. And it basically gave 4 safe harbors. I'm not going to bore you with what they are because frankly, to a non-techie, they all sound the same. But you could go find out what they are. The bottom line is that it basically allowed user-generated sites to operate and put the onus on traditional media companies to issue a takedown notice to
individual users.
Well, not just individual users, but also to like the YouTubes of the world. So if YouTube, for example, if somebody uploads a video of Lazy Sunday, which was the SNL skit, to YouTube, then NBC basically just uploads a takedown notice, like issues a takedown notice. And so long as YouTube takes down that infringing video, then YouTube does not get shut down. What these 2 new bills are setting out to do basically are removing the onus from the traditional media companies, and they basically allow the traditional media companies to simply say, okay, YouTube is infringing, so we're going to do what happened to WikiLeaks, which is cut off their source of funding. They can't collect money, et cetera, which means the death of UGC sites. Obviously, the tech community, as well as the venture capitalists who are funding all these companies, they're a bit upset. So what is your take first about the Protect IP and the e-Parasite law?
Okay, I get why big media and mainstream media is doing this. I think it's a huge effing mistake. So basically, I think they're trying to buy themselves some time until they're ready to adapt to the technology, at which point they can choose who, how, and when to litigate at their discretion. When what they should be doing is taking their investors' money. In fact, they should have done this 5 years ago, but they should start doing it now instead of spending it on lobbyists and lawyers. They should be taking their investors' money and finding ways to embrace different technology and really embracing and adapting to like the really lowered cost of content production and just focus on producing awesome content. Because really, what are the YouTubes of the world? They're distribution channels. I don't know, it's almost, this is a really bad analogy, but it's almost like an old school newspaper suing Kimberly-Clark because their paper was used to reprint something that was a copyright infringement.
Okay, so I'm going to first agree with one thing you said. If you take a look, case in point of Hulu, where the traditional media companies got together and said, we're going to be proactive and we're going to build something, then great. But here's the reality. Newsflash. The faster traditional media companies embrace the web, the faster they kill themselves. Because the reality is that the web shrinks traditional businesses. The web removes all of the inefficiencies of traditional industries and businesses, including media, but also travel
and
everything.
Now you're just saying the market has changed. The forces of supply and demand have shifted based on new realities. There's no longer a market for the kind of product that they're packaging and producing, and they're just wasting their money trying to force that down everyone's throat. I would even say this borders like on antitrust and collusion.
For the record, I'm against these bills. I'm just playing devil's advocate. I don't want to get hate mail and I don't want to be a hypocrite. But I do think it's important
send him hate mail.
No, but I do think it's important for the critics of these laws and those who question the traditional media companies to put themselves in the shoes of the other side, just for a second, to come up with a better argument. And this is my point. It's not that different. You know, there's a saying, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission. So at the very, I know I'm comparing apples and oranges, but when a VC goes out there and they fund YouTube or Napster, both sites I love as a consumer, I think they don't go out there and ask permission of the traditional media companies saying, you know, there's a chance that basically these tools are going to disrupt your industry, so we're going to play with your IP, but we're not going to ask you how you feel about it because clearly you don't like this, so we're going to disrupt you. We're not going to ask your permission. But after the fact, if you object to an infringing piece of document, then you could issue a takedown. And after the fact, you're welcome to use these tools, even though they destroy your value over time, which I agree. It's survival of the fittest. It's Darwinism. Too bad. But I'm just saying, how different is it now for the traditional media companies to say, you know, tech companies, we're not going to sit down and invite you to the table and talk about how you feel about these bills. We're going to do exactly what you did. We're going to preempt. We're going to go out there and get so draconian with these first strike tactics that then you're going to have to come back and you're going to say, no, but let's have a discussion.
And
How could we update the MCA?
This kind of big corporate influence over legislation, I think, is precisely what the Occupy movement is about right now. But I want to draw a parallel, and I don't know if it's a factual parallel, but we've all heard the conspiracy theory that big oil bought the electric car or the hydrogen car or the water car or the cold fusion car, and they put it in a safe, and they own the patents, and they'll never let it get produced because it'll eat into their market share. If that is true, that makes them really evil because it's hurting the rest of us. And I think this is the same kind of, I don't know, there's the same kind of ethos behind this move. I think that it's slowing down progress that benefits citizens, consumers, and users just to keep a bunch of rich people who made some bad business decisions when the internet started gaining ground. It keeps them rich, and it screws everyone else. I think it's bad.
Yeah, my point is, it's unfair for people to be like, the traditional media companies are crazy. It's not in their economic incentive to be for the status quo. So, you shouldn't blame them. I think, the reality is like...
No, I can blame them for not having been smarter about addressing technology as it evolved.
But the sooner they address it, the sooner they go out of business.
Bullshit.
No, if in
They just have to change their business model and adapt it. They should focus more on content production and worry less about the actual distribution. Great, I don't have to maintain a network anymore. How easy is that?
Okay, do you think these bills will actually pass and become law, or do you think that they're basically, brass knuckle tactics to get the tech companies to agree to more? Because the DMCA, here's why the DMCA, I think, pisses off a lot of these media companies. The onus, look at Viacom and YouTube. For the record,
spend a fortune on lawyers to send down one takedown notice
exactly,
at a time.
and even after that, they just reappear. So I'm just saying, the media companies are just trying to give a taste of the medicine back to the tech firms. Fred Wilson.
But really, you're going to shut down YouTube because of one SNL skit that was uploaded?
But it's not one SNL skit. I think if you take a look at the landscape and what Napster did to the record labels, what YouTube's impact on Hollywood, I think Viacom is misguided for not using YouTube today. Okay, I side with YouTube, and yes, I'm biased as a new media entrepreneur. Let me not come across as a hypocrite.
I'm biased as a user.
No, but as a user, as a user, I'm fully on the side of the YouTube and the Napsters. But I'm just saying, I try not to be a hypocrite. I try to see both sides of the argument. My point is, I'm not siding with the traditional media companies, even though I have a vested interest to not piss off the media companies who are our partners. But I would just sort of speak to them and say, you guys. I understand their approach. It's very, very draconian. It's like the first strike, philosophy. But my point is the VCs who are against this need to understand why the media companies are doing this. Because they're basically doing exactly what the tech firms did, which is they said, we're going to unleash all these disruptive tools out there, and we don't care what happens to the tech companies.
Okay, you know what's disruptive? TiVo's disruptive, because with TiVo I can capture a show and then have the file to upload.
Yeah, but
how come no one's going after them?
Because TiVo's already becoming almost passe.
It's still one of those, I know, but that kind of technology is still a disruptive tool. At the end of the day, it was the user who recorded the stuff, which is pseudo copyright infringement. Then they uploaded it and shared it and distributed it to other people. That's the user, the individual user crossing the line, not the YouTube. Okay, and as expensive as it is, and as much as an economic incentive as they have, I think this goes very much beyond just misguided. I think it's grotesquely litigious. Okay,
I just want to finish off a few points to make sure my position is clear. One, investor Fred Wilson, who's one of the nicest VCs out there, not like the evil VC that you hear of, very generous with his time. And I do commend him for basically trying to bring a spotlight onto this. His main point, and I think this is what I at least want to relay, it's good to play devil's advocate, but at some point I'm in favor of those against these bills. He does say that, at the end of the day, the DMCA does work. I will just add that it might not be perfect, and it's not what the media companies work, but it does work. And he basically argues that look at the jobs that the tech firms have created over the last 2 decades. And I would say, yeah, if you probably look at the stats, those jobs created probably far outweigh the jobs lost by traditional media companies. So at the end of the day, the net impact to society because of the DMCA is positive. So I think that's the main argument here. Just one last thing now on this, and then we can move on. Now, I do think, though, that both sides, interestingly, have been driven by greed and fear. Initially, I would say the tech firms and the VCs were driven by greed, by unleashing these tools and saying, we'll worry about the result later. And then the media companies were driven by fear, like, oh my God, I'm going to have less money to basically eat shrimp and cocktails and champagne. And now that these bills have been drafted and it scares the living daylights out of the tech firms, it's almost like the opposite, where the tech companies are now being driven by fear and the VCs are being driven by fear, and the traditional media companies, all of a sudden, they're the greedy ones who are like, oh my God, we can destroy the internet and take everything back. But at the end of the day, I think, look at all the great things that the internet has done and the World Wide Web has done. I don't understand how anybody, including the traditional media companies, could actually be in favor of this. I don't think they expect this to pass. I don't even think they want this to pass, but I think they want to use a very, very hard tactic with the tech and VC community to say, you guys have to play ball. Now, I will just say this. If this does become law and the DMCA blows up, they should be careful, because I think the uncertainty could be far greater. And it reminds me of that expression, better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. And I do think that if the DMCA is blown up, then you're going to see, like when they killed Napster, what happened? Kazaa came around. All these things came around that were far, far wilder and harder to contain than Napster ever was. So I think history repeats itself, and the traditional media companies should be careful. We're going to take a short break, come back for lightning round.